Welcome to the ABQ Show. I'm Wally Drangmeister, and our special guests today are Colleen Gorman and Lara Dale, who are going to, they're a wealth of knowledge and information. We're going to be talking about public access television, the past, the present, and the future. And for those of you who don't know, ProView Networks has a role in that. This is a part of that as well, but great to have you both as guests.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us on.
So Laura, I think you said you were in the best position to kind of give us a history of public access television in New Mexico and in Albuquerque specifically, where we've been.
You know, the thing people need to know about public access is it started out in Canada back in mid-70s, late 70s, and what happened is some NYU film students were out in Canada. I think they were looking into like water contamination issues or land rights or something for this indigenous community. And they noticed these big old trenches were being dug. And they realized it's the cables. And back then, the cable companies were the rogue outcasts. You know, they weren't the ABC, CBS, NBC. They were the cool, hip, they were almost like the MTV of their time, right?
And they were little companies back then.
Yeah, and they were really trying to get people involved. So back then they were really interested in just getting anybody and everybody involved. And so the interesting thing is, two things happened out of that. One is they were able to negotiate, because they were NYU film students, that in exchange for basically the rental of the public lands for those cables, they would get the infrastructure and money for little TV stations for the community. So it's the equivalent of a public library, only it's film equipment.
Right.
And so you're getting the training, you're getting the equipment, you're getting all these things. And it was to level the playing field, because even today, most television is in the hands of monetized, corporatized interests. And so this is this last bastion of free speech. And so I am a free speech advocate. I'm a New Mexico native, but I've lived in California and done a lot of work on that issue. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that this organization, quote unquote, I think we're going to be 40 this year, something like that. But this is one of the oldest public access stations in the country. And we have always been about free speech, and we've always been about community. And we're so excited to be given this new platform that is actually going to not only bring us into the future, but also technologically catch us up with like the new, you know, the high def cameras and all that sort of stuff. So Colleen has this insanely wonderful vision from both an indigenous and educational standpoint. And I am just, every part of me is behind this. I can't wait till this becomes something we're actually experiencing.
All right, so Colleen, give us a high-level overview of your vision as things are today, because, you know, when obviously 40 years ago, the internet was just been invented by Al Gore or whoever invented it. No need to pick on who invented the internet, but things have changed a lot. Communications technology has changed a lot. But the fact is that we're here talking, there's still a role for this, and maybe a bigger and better role that the internet actually helps, not hinders the opportunity to get messages out there in the world.
Oh, right. Absolutely. So for those who just joined us, my name's Colleen Gorman. I am Navajo. And so for my Navajo people, I do need to do a formal introduction. So I'll introduce myself in Navajo. Yat Ash Aya Colleen Gorman Dashijinin Nanish Ejet Kachitin Shlom Do Big Batwani Twitchitni Bashichin Kinta Chitni Dashiche Do the Bethlehem Dashanella Chinli Dant Nasha Akut Ego Sun Shlom. So I just introduced my clans, and I am of the Red Running into the Charcoal Streak Water Clan, the Zuni Red Running into the Charcoal Streak Water Clan. I'm born for the Deer Springs Bitter Water Clan, and my maternal grandparents are the Red House people, and my paternal grandparents are the Black Sheep people.
All right, very good.
So that's who I am.
And can I just say, I know you probably get this a lot, you have a very famous name in New Mexico, and there is a relationship there. Just share with our viewers that, if you don't mind, please.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
So my uncle was R.C. Gorman, and he was quoted in the New York Times by the New Mexico Cultural Affairs Department that he was the Picasso of Indian arts. Also, Carl Gorman was his father, and I had a stronger relationship with him. I knew him a little bit more, and Carl Gorman, I think, was just amazing because he started the very first Native American Studies program in the entire country at UC Davis.
Okay.
And so that was one of my grandpas. And my auntie, Tanya Gorman, is someone I really look up to as well, and she was the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Diné College. She ran the Multicultural Services Program at Northern Arizona University, and she was also on the Arizona Board of Regents.
Okay.
So I just, and my aunties, all my aunties are amazing. Rosetta LaFont, Inja Nelson Gorman, and Pat Gorman. So I just have this amazing like heritage of women and also just grandpas and grandmas and people who have come before me. And I think from my dad's side, the Gorman side, the person who I really feel was really powerful in that was our great-grandmother, Mary Brown, and her mother walked back from the long walk when she was 4 years old.
Okay, yes.
And so she was a medicine woman and really kept the family together. So the culture and the heritage of Navajo culture, that's really indigenous culture, that is very strong and something that I live my life by. And I try to carry on those Navajo prayers every day at the 4 times of the day. It's something that I really try to stick to keep myself in alignment with those who came before me, and also to be thankful for those who came before me, those are here now, and those who are going to come after me. And
Okay.
that's always in my prayers every day. And so when I think about the work that I do with as a free speech advocate as well, that's my prayer as well, is to kind of sort of be a leader, but not selfish, but it's really about supporting the community and remembering those who came before, and to keep the voices and to strengthen and empower those who don't have voices. Because as an indigenous person, we have the largest suicide rate, especially for teenagers, because of the trauma and from the genocide and the cultural trauma. And so there's so much trauma on the peoples. And so just in struggling to recover our voice and be strong leaders again, we have to move past that trauma. And so that's part of regaining our voice and also sharing that trauma with the world. And because our issues society-wide as indigenous people, there's so much sort of stacked against us that not having a voice at any level is really a huge part of the problem.
And that's why public access is so important.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about, from any perspective,
Okay.
I'd certainly like to hear the indigenous perspective
Okay.
you have in terms of going forward
Oh, with
now and
public
in the
access.
futures. Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
what role can it serve, and again, any ideas you have for shows,
yes,
voices,
absolutely.
messages,
Okay.
how would that work?
Okay, so first of all, everything comes from quote unquote Incorporated's mission. And the mission of quote unquote is to support freedom of speech and democracy through community media. And in the past, when we started public access 30 years ago, 40 years ago in 1979, when we launched Channel 26, it all came from that vision of freedom of speech and democracy through community media. So a big part of that was allowing access to people, so providing training at a really low rate. So back then we did it at $65 for one class.
Right.
And then that would pay for 1 year's annual membership fee. And if people couldn't afford it, we had a hardship request, and we would just ask them to volunteer their time. And then we were like the library, where they could check out equipment and studios and exercise their freedom of speech, because public access really was about being the electronic soapbox.
Yes.
For people to go into the town square and share their voices. And so there was a wide range of programming, everything from, Hemp TV, Nativezine, the Yahweh Show, followed by the Muslim Hour, and the Gun
ProView.
Show, and
Right,
ProViews.
yes.
It was a lot of fun,
Yes.
It was so much fun to have the
That was
diversity
the
of people.
wild, wild west of the day. So everything, right?
Right, and
messages that people might not agree very much on anything, but they were all there,
Right.
show after show after
Right,
show.
and Don Schrader is probably the most,
most
famous
famous?
man in Albuquerque
I was
because
going
of
to ask
public
you.
access.
Yes.
And when I went up to the state capitol this year to work on getting some bills introduced, one of them I'd like to pre-file in December because it was in the second committee, but it wasn't heard, so
Right.
it's still kind of alive. So the very first legislator I spoke to said, I want to see Don Schrader on this show. I spoke to somebody else the other day, and they said, you know what? I want to see Don Schrader back on public access.
Well, that's the thing I
And
wanted
it's just
to say.
random, you know, everybody
yes.
wants to see Don Schrader
Well,
back.
because coming from the Bay Area, which is like a huge, you know, that's where I sort of learned about this issue. In the Bay Area, there was a gentleman, this was in Berkeley, who was wheelchair-bound, disabilities on the scale of like a Stephen Hawking.
Yes.
So he was speaking through a straw and the whole thing. All he wanted to do was create like a 30-block radius bandwidth in which to do shows to inform disabilities people in the community what their rights were, where to ask for wheelchair ramps, all these kinds of things. And the cable companies went after him pretty vehemently because they wanted the bandwidth.
Right.
And that's what's kind of caused most of the turmoil in public access. It's just that bandwidth is the gold rush for new technology. The Wi-Fi companies, everybody wants that territory. And so one of the things I'm proudest of is the fact that, you know, some very, very large, there was a station in LA that had 300,000 followers and it's completely black now. Right. So our little tiny station has just hung in there and not let the man come and take us and kept the voice of the community alive. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, Don Schrader, love him or hate him,
Right.
he represents, if you've got a Don Schrader in your community, that means you truly have free speech.
Yes. Yes.
Love him or hate him.
And for those of you who may not know Don, which one of you would like to take a shot at describing what some of his most famous shows?
I think they called it the Naked Guy Show.
Yes.
That's what they called it. But he really had some very different ideas from a lot of, just because of who he is. That's all I can say. Is a very, very
what
different
I can say about Don is he's just one of the most compassionate human beings I've ever known.
And sincere.
He doesn't,
Yes.
you know, his whole thing is the lightest footprint on the earth that you can have, and so he wears the same clothes. He doesn't use even. I think he barely uses public transit. He mostly walks everywhere. He's the buffest 80-year-old or whatever I've ever seen, but he is a truly compassionate human being. And I think that one of the things I love and I've always loved about quote unquote is there are people who get marginalized in our community who have tremendous value, have tremendous values, and don't get heard on mainstream media. And public access is one of those places where these voices that also represent all of us as human beings get a chance to learn professionally how to do these things and get heard, you know. And that was the thing. Some people say to me, like, well, we have the internet now. Why do we need public access? I say right back, you do not learn, the good jobs right now in New Mexico are in television. That's where all the incentives are. You do not learn how to get a show on every week with all the technical challenges, all the editing problems, except through public access. And I actually got to know Ed Esner because he started out in his little tiny public access station in Wisconsin or wherever he was from, so that by the time he got to California, he already knew how to put on an entire TV show. He knew behind camera, he knew front of camera, all from his little tiny public access station. So the resource we are as well to the film industry, to training people who can't, you know, they don't have the tuition to get into these fancy film schools, but they can learn how to put on their own shows and meet the deadlines and be, you know, great editing and all these kinds of things. That is another thing I'm really looking forward to, is the feed school for particularly marginalized younger communities to really have a chance at these good union jobs.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to the vision of quote unquote. And so quote unquote has settled with the city, and we are actually out of that settlement. We are going to be operating educational access television. And we may or may not be part of Channel 26. We do have a very strong relationship with ProViews, and I love working with Steve Davis and just working with ProViews. That's neither here nor there. But with educational access television, I'm really excited because I want to bring that back. I want to support training and freedom of speech. And so I have this idea called campsites.
And if you don't mind, let's go to break. And when we come back, I definitely want you to expound on the vision and some of the details about how we get that going.
Okay.
So we're visiting with Colleen Gorman and Lara Dale here on the ABQ Show on ProView Networks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What is glamour? Frailty. What is desire? Diamonds. They say a life lived without passion is hardly worth living.
Ma'am? 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 Dang, this one made me feel all special.
Locally loved restaurants like Farina Pizzeria, Farina Alto, and the Artichoke Cafe are the perfect venue for your next event. Farina Alto has traditional Italian food, plus handcrafted cocktails in a beautiful Northeast Heights location. Farina Pizzeria with a downtown vibe, amazing affordable wines, and local beer. And the Artichoke Cafe has set the standard for casual fine dining since 1989. Visit our family of restaurants and see what fine dining is all about.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at ProView Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Welcome back to the ABQ Show. I'm Wally Drangmeister, and we're visiting with Colleen Gorman and Lara Dale about quote unquote. And Colleen, going into the break, you talked about your vision. Quickly reiterate that, and then talk about some of the programs that you are contemplating and putting in action to fulfill that vision.
Okay, so for educational access, what I would like to do is I would like to create what's called campsites. Campsites are actually an acronym for Community Access Media Pod Sites. And so I already have a campsite with Robert F. Kennedy Charter School. And so we have the LPFM license to operate a low-power FM radio station.
Okay.
And because of that partnership, RFK Charter School completely built out the radio station for us because community engagement is part of its mission. So what I would like to do is I would like to support other educational institutions, tribal entities and governments and nations and the pueblos, as well as nonprofits even, in supporting them through partnerships to bring in resources to set them up as campsites.
Okay.
Now, a campsite can be temporary, semi-permanent, or permanent. And that's because media can be taught in many different ways. Everybody has different workflows and different tools. And so as long as there's enough space for for a few people to meet and some electricity and Wi-Fi, then they can be a campsite.
Okay.
And so if people want to connect with me regarding that, my email address is ceo@quote-unquote.org. And my phone number or a quote-unquote phone number right now to connect to is 505-850-9327. So campsites, that's what I'm looking for to support educational content.
Yes.
And if people are interested in producing content that can be framed as educational, then I would like to put that on educational access television.
Okay. And you know, when we talk about producing educational content, producing high quality content, it's not an either or.
Right.
Meaning, you know, for example, so hopefully you're watching this show on Comcast 26 on Sunday morning or sometime during the day, but you're just as likely to be watching it on Facebook or YouTube. And so it's not an either or, but but you're using this as a place to get this kind of content creation, this developing messages underway.
Exactly.
And statewide.
And statewide, because that was the thing with the bill supporting SB 589 was getting funding to support expanding community access or community media statewide. And that's not just public access, that would be like LPFM radio stations, right? So I kind of envisioned like setting up campsites at maybe rural libraries. There's about 60 of them. And like we could do lecture series, you know. But building out libraries so that they could actually participate in freedom of speech and keeping them relevant to the community and not just being about books, because a lot of kids these days don't read books anymore, but still being part of that and creating content that is important and archival. So I see campsites, you know, partnering with libraries, partnering with chapter houses on the Navajo Reservation, because we have and even not even just chapter houses, tribes around the entire United States. So I would like to support the development of an indigenous media network.
Okay.
And to support language and cultural preservations, as well as promotion of tribal sports and things like that. And that's where a partnership with ProViews would come in, because that's ProViews' forte.
Well, ProView's forte is sports. You know, they do over 700 live high school events a year.
Right.
And sports is big, particularly basketball. And I think I share with you, my dad was a small college basketball coach. So, but it's as much enthusiasm as places like New Mexico State and UNM get for their basketball programs. I don't think it's anything to compare with the schools in and around the Navajo Nation for enthusiasm.
Right.
So
definitely, it's a big thing, and so is running. You know, because out on the res, there's not much to do, but you can play basketball and you can run. And so with the campsites, again, it's about the training part of things. So I kind of see if we can support teachers to produce live shows for a year or two, then because they're part of the industry, they can get CTE certification, which means they can get additional pay, and maybe they can teach summer programs through their schools to produce live content. And so also with students being part of this, students, if they have an idea for a show, or they want to do poetry or perform or do you know, the issues that affect their community the most, well then that would be part of their freedom of speech, but that's also their skills development, and we could feed them into the TV and film industry through their skills development, through internships, but also because I am a co-founder of the Media Arts Collaborative Charter School, and also a certified teacher in social studies, well, we can also align our elective classes, or even integrate them into core classes for a student credit accrual. So students can get credit for this, either elective or if it's project-based and part of their regular class that's core, then they can get credit for it. So I think there's really great opportunities there, and I would love, again, we started we worked with the Film Apprenticeship Program, and we developed a Film Apprenticeship Program back in 2012, 2010, 2011 for the state of New Mexico. And so since we haven't been part of the TV industry for a minute, I'm not sure where that is, but we did it in the past, you know, and who's to say we can't do it again in the future. So there's so much opportunity in terms of training and being a pipeline into the TV and film industry. And if we get our skills of students and young people or people involved up to the level where, hey, let's hit up Netflix and let's get internships or even produce content that can be aired on Netflix. For Ed Access, I'd also like to create a video on demand platform. And so if a teacher, let's say they can't make it to their trauma-informed training, if we film that, we put it onto a VOD platform, then they miss the training, but they can still log in and watch the training. And maybe that subscribership fee could be really small, you know, just so that it can pay for itself and pay the bills to like continue and grow. I would like to do an Ed Access VOD platform. And also teach people how to do live streaming on Facebook, you know, and our campsites, you know, if we can support them to get a TriCaster, well, guess what? If they're scheduled to be a live show, they can do a live show from their school and push that content into the head point where our channel is, and do a live show. And so it's like expanding and creating these campsites, these pods where people can exercise their freedom of speech and really flourish and develop skills, and it's just really exciting. That's what my vision is.
Well, that's a that's a very compelling vision. There's a lot of great stuff in there. One question I had, you know, in terms of pods, the world's seen a transition from regular definition to now to HD and 4K. Where do you see that, quote unquote, where they are in that, and what do you think some of the challenges and solutions are as the resolution keeps coming up? You know, because a standard definition camera now is $100. A 4K camera is probably $10,000, and there's stuff in between.
I just wanted to speak, and Colleen I think knows more about this, but from what I understand with the city, there was originally 9 channels.
Yes.
There's now 4. But the reason is not because we let those go, it's because those have been consolidated so that we can have higher resolution channels. So those 4 channels are going to be serious high def channels.
Yeah, those are four HD channels.
So
are
already
just
the infrastructure for it is a much higher level of technology, and presumably the city's also going to be providing the infrastructure. Hopefully we get 4K cameras and those kinds of things. So hopefully with that investment by the city in really upgrading, everything will be upgraded. But you know, the point being that we've got to show community involvement. We know we've got to show how well we do that. And I just wanted to speak to the history of quote unquote. In 2012, right before the contract was taken away, they were actually 5th in the nation under New York and Chicago.
We had 500 active producers at the time,
Wow,
and about 3,000 total producers in our database.
So we believe that we have the, you know, just because it was dormant doesn't mean it isn't still there. But the other thing I'm really proud of is I called the head Alliance for Community Media as the umbrella organization for all of us public access stations. And I asked them, and apparently this is going to be the first public access station in the country run by a Native American woman. And I'm really proud of that.
That's fantastic. All right, in the short time we have, if people are out there thinking, maybe I might be a producer, maybe I might do my own show,
how can they get a hold of us?
Well, yeah, what should they be thinking about, and what steps should they be taking, and how can they reach out?
Well, first off, I am going to need a programming coordinator. So I'm going to be putting out there to recruit for that position. So if anyone is interested in scheduling content that will be on the channel, please send an email with your resume and a cover letter to ceo@quote-unquote.org, and that's quote spelled out and unquote spelled out.
QUOTE-unquote.org.
Yes. So just want to let people know I am looking to hire for that position. So if people want to get a hold of me, then then you want to do that, and you can put in programming coordinator in the subject line.
Do you want to bring up the meeting? Do you want to bring up the meeting on Monday? See if we
on Monday, City Council will also be voting on, and that's Monday, April 22nd. City Council will be voting on the Channel 27 and what's going to happen with that. So if people are interested and want to know, I would suggest showing up. You can sign up for public comment at 4, City Council meetings at 5. On May 6th, they will be voting on the newly negotiated cable franchise agreements. So if people want to know about that, then you can also ask Cultural Affairs for a working document so you can do public comment on that, because I haven't seen that document, and I'm very interested in seeing what the new agreement is for the franchise for the next 10 years for all the 4 PEG channels and the LO channel here in Albuquerque. So definitely, if you're interested and want to make a public comment on that, City Council will vote on that May 6th on a Monday.
All right, and any ideas how something, and let me try, you tell me yes or no, something that you're passionate about, something that you want to speak about, and something that you think needs given a voice?
Oh, okay. People with disabilities, I want to support that as one of the #1 shows, because we were one of 2 stations in the country to support people with disabilities having a voice. Anybody that's a voice that's marginalized, I want to get that out there.
All right, we've been visiting with Colleen Gorman and Lara Dale about quote-unquote the past, present, and future of public access television and bright future on the ABQ Show. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you.